It is another edition of Crew Call. Leo, Jonesy, Sherm, Jack, E. We're going to the NBA Finals for the first time in the history of the Toronto Raptors. Leo, prior to game one, you have this sense and a feel, and I'm actually getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. Raptors are going to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, you know, Matty, it's unbelievable. And here's the thing. After the Raptors beat the Bucks, talking to everybody on the floor, you know, Masai Ujiri, all the players. And, you know, I think you made this point in our last call that it wasn't like, hey, we won. It's like, we're going to finals and we're winning. That was the mentality. And the buzz going into game one was unbelievable. As you guys know, I got a short walk to the arena, right? And normally – you know, you try to kind of sneak in. There was no sneaking in. The lines were around the block. You had everybody trying to get in Jurassic Park from the morning. Now, we had a buzz before the finals. This buzz was crazy. And people going, Raptors, Leo, hey. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. So, you know, I was just excited. I know, Sherm, you felt it too. We were talking about that. It was just crazy.
Yeah, no question about it, Leo. And, you know, it was one of those moments, as you talked about, when the Raptors clinched the Eastern Conference Finals. I got on the floor and I ran into Masai, and we kind of hugged each other, and he was kind of aggressive about it. And he pulls away from me, and he looks at me. He's like, we're going to win this bleep thing. And I was like, you're right. We are going to win it. And Masai, as you said, Leo, and everybody in the organization felt that they were not only happy to be there, their job wasn't done. And game one, before game one started, and I know you guys all experienced this, but to hear that national anthem sung by the fans was one of the most chilling things in terms of hair raising on the back of your neck, emotional, you know, just drawn into that situation that had ever been before a game even started. Just the support of the fans and the pride. And for all of us who've covered this team, I mean, it was a pretty special moment before that ball ever went up in the air.
You know, I think it harkens back to what we touched on, you know, in the last episode as well, when we did this crew call with everybody, all of us, you know, the years invested, you know, whether it's decades or multiple decades, and original day oneers like Leo and Jonesy. I just think the emotion that existed within the city, let alone the province, the country, with everybody kind of behind you now, and to Leo's point, walking into the arena and you know, parking the car, and it's the parking lot attendants. It's the guys, you know, selling the hot dogs on the street. It's people when you're waiting at the crosswalk to head to the arena, fighting your way through that line to get to the media entrance, let alone once you're in the arena. You always hear about the buzz, and it becomes cliche, oh, there's a buzz in the building. There was a buzz in the building on the streets. There was just that fever pitch of everybody anticipating, waiting for that ball to go up. And everybody that you spoke to seem to be talking with excitement, not necessarily nervousness. And I think in years gone by, it was more nervousness. This was excitement and, I believe, confidence in what this team could accomplish going into that game one, Jonesy.
Eric, you know, and you guys will hear me say this all the time through these next 4 or 5 calls as we talk about the finals. We've all covered the NBA for a long time. We've all covered the finals, whether it be from our couch or some of us having a chance to actually go and be in the arena. And it's something you see your whole life. You know, the finals, game one, you sit down and you watch the game. And I remember talking with my kids after, and they're saying, you know, I said, geez, no game tonight. And they said, Dad, we are the game. Like, the Raptors are in the NBA Finals. This is where, you know, the road ends, and the Raptors are right there. And again, I reflect back on, you know, these scenes that you've seen your whole life. And those of us that have had a chance to go to the finals, you got to go to the tent to pick up your pass. You have to go in a certain gate. All that stuff that you were used to experiencing somewhere else is happening in Toronto now. And I got the distinct feeling from the team and the organization, everybody around, there's none of this, oh, we're happy to be here stuff. We're here to win. You know, ask Dan Marino, ask guys that get there once and never get back. And think, oh, we're going to get other chances. No. You got to jump for the ring right now. And that was the distinct feeling I had around the organization. And then you think of guys like Kyle and Pascal and Fred and Norm that have been around and have lost to the Warriors in regular season games and been close. Now they look around, they go, I got this guy Kawhi Leonard with me. I got Danny Green. We've been through this dress rehearsal number of times. We're ready to win this thing. This isn't just we're happy to be here type of stuff, Jacko.
3 quick things. Number one, just I felt so great for the fans, kind of summing up what you guys were talking about and the hoopla and the joy and the excitement on the streets, as well as in the building. That feeling of just looking around right before the game started and looking at the faces of the fans, it was a really cool feeling inside. Number two, I focus, and Sherm, you made this point about the national anthem, which was just absolutely remarkable. I looked at the Warriors, and to watch the Warrior players and the Warrior coaches, they were like, oh boy, these people are ready. The third thing is, Jonesy, you mentioned about having Kawhi Leonard. You look at the Raptors, they beat the Warriors twice during the regular season.
Yes.
And by the way, in Golden State, with a fully healthy Warrior team and the Raptors not having Kawhi Leonard, they absolutely blew the doors off the Warriors in Golden State. So going into this series, having taken care of business against Orlando, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and the fact that you beat them twice during the regular season, I think you had every right, particularly having home court, to say, hey, man, we not only have a shot to do this, we expect to do this.
That now leads us to another piece, and that is you head into game one. Golden State had 9 days off, and the narrative was that there really wasn't much conversation south of us with respect to the Toronto Raptors and their chance. I think internally we all had that sense because we were there. We've talked about this before every day and how they lived in the moment. And so now, Leo, you go into game one, and strategically speaking, right, there's a sense of, while they didn't necessarily believe, Raptors felt that they could win this, not everybody else talking about it believed that. And so when you look back at game one, Leo, where do you take us?
Well, to me, if you recap the season, right, and I said this at the beginning of this season, Raptors had the second best record in the NBA. That's why they had home court against Golden State. They had 58 wins. You mentioned beating Golden State during the regular season. This is a team that had injuries, had midseason trades, and injuries to key players during the season. Still had 58 wins. They had load management with Kawhi. We're 17-5 without Kawhi. This is a team that was a very good team. Nick Nurse did a phenomenal job, and at no point in time was he sitting there saying, hey, we're going to get 60, 59, 58 wins. He was saying, we're going to get to the finish line healthy. So if there's anybody down south that did not respect the Raptors, then they didn't know what they were watching. They didn't understand what was going on. And coming into this series, I think the Raptors were 100% confident, as a lot of us were, that they could win this series and beat Golden State, because the matchups, in my opinion, were favorable for the Raptors to do that. And I'm going to say one other thing, that Kevin Durant, we all know what happened later on, but even with Kevin Durant, I believe the Raptors could beat the Golden State Warriors. Now, we're never going to see that in this series, but I believe that simply because of matchups. And remember, if he is on the floor, that's one other guy shooting instead of Clay or Steph. So it's a lot of different factors that come into that play. But that's how confident I was about the Raptors.
It's interesting. The truth tellers in the NBA, and it's always off the record, are the pro personnel scouts and the advanced scouts. They know the league better than anybody. And I think too often we hear what the U.S. media is saying, and quite frankly, most of them don't watch a lot of Toronto Raptor basketball, and they're completely misinformed. I think we'd all agree with that. I always say this: if you watch the games, you actually know what you're talking about. But a lot of people don't watch the games. They're a mile wide and an inch thick, and that's a major problem. But going during the playoffs in particular, and talking to advanced scouts and talking to pro scouts and talking to people, basketball people in the league, I think everyone felt, based upon the two matchups during the regular season, where the Warriors were at that point, where the Raptors were at that point, that the Raptors by far were more than ready for the moment, to meet the moment. And bottom line is, whatever the noise was, the basketball people knew that this was going to be a really good series, and a series that could go 6 or 7 games. And the Raptors had a great chance to win, Sherm.
No question about it. And, I honestly think when you're talking about coverage of the Raptors, especially down south, we're talking about a couple of things. We're talking about a bias. I mean, the only team outside of the U.S. This is considered to be a U.S. league primarily when you talk about all the cities that are involved. So there's a bit of a bias there. And then also there's some ignorance. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not watching Raptor games to the extent that they're watching Golden State games or they're watching LA Laker games. It's just not going to happen. So it's basically reading off numbers. And when you see numbers and you see, a roster of players, you put it up against a 3-time champ, you're obviously going to lean a different way. So it's understandable. It's unfortunate, but it's understandable. But those who watch knew what the Raptors were capable of, and all of us exactly knew what the Raptors were capable of. But going into this game, there were a few things that I was looking at. Number one, you have to compete on the three-point line against Golden State. Either you have to make enough threes or you have to be able to defend the three. But you have to be able to match up in somewhat shape or form on the three-point line. The Raptors did a great job of that. And I really thought that defensively, they needed to create offense by turning Golden State over and getting out into the open court, as well as getting back defensively. And we saw the Raptors do those things. But I just thought overall the mentality and the game plan that Nick Nurse put in for game 1 against Golden State was excellent. And it did benefit the Raptors, I feel, to be consistently playing, not have the long layoff that Golden State had. They came off of a good run against Milwaukee. They didn't have that 10 days, 9 days or whatever to regroup and reset. They got back at it very quickly, and I think that benefited the Raptors, Eric.
It's funny, Sherm. I'll hit on the 2 points you just brought up, but, for people that maybe were just looking at numbers, as you said, if they were guilty of just looking at numbers or rosters, then they should have looked at ripping off 4 straight wins in round 1 against Orlando, or big road wins, in round 2 against Philadelphia and containing Joel Embiid for chunks of that series, let alone then ripping off 4 straight against Milwaukee and holding Giannis and putting the wall up against him in the way that they shut down the Bucks. Those were the numbers that ultimately matter more than anything else, let alone the fact that you've got Pascal Siakam likely winning the most improved player award, and you've got an MVP candidate in Kawhi Leonard, and the list goes on. Those are the numbers that ultimately should have mattered to the pundits or alleged experts that maybe weren't giving the Raptors, their justified due. But then the other point I guess you bring up about the three-point shooting, what stood out in that first quarter was one guy that had been up and down a little bit, I guess, in the playoffs, and Marc Gasol was banging down shots early in that game and ultimately proved to have a huge game 1. But even more so, Danny Green, who I think played well defensively in chunks through the postseason but was struggling to find a shot. He came off with 2 early buckets, had 5, I think the Raptors' first 7-9 points, had a strong game overall. And then, of course, Fred VanVleet just picking up where he left off with his scoring. And that, to me, was an early sign that the Raptors were getting contributions from some guys that they hadn't been already, especially in Danny Green, and they were going punch for punch with that second unit, let alone with the starters. And it was a real great sign early on that, all right, anybody that's doubting whether this team can hang, Jonesy, they're more than proving they can and they will hang.
It was like the year was like one giant fire drill for the Raptors in preparing for the finals. And they always say when you get into the playoffs, the team that loses its character first is the team that's going to get beat. And I just felt that the Raptors had crafted a style of play, a character, a culture, a way of doing things all year. And when the stage hit the finals and they got to the brightest light, they weren't afraid. They were prepared for the moment. And to those points that we've talked about, guys, Golden State is the kind of team where as good as your defense is, you need your offense to keep scoring, to keep you in the games because of the way they play. And even though Golden State Raptors held them under 44%. Toronto shot 50% in that game. And they made a break in the middle of the third quarter that pushed Golden State back a bit. And then we always talk about how important it is to play with the lead. They played with the lead the rest of the way. They did a terrific job. I'm just checking my numbers. They had 25 assists on their 39 field goals. Their offense was working. Fred was great off the bench. Marc Gasol, Eric, as you talked about, had the 20 points. So, again, I go back to what I said before. We're talking about the people, who are in the know and watching and understanding this. Those people knew. They knew how good the Raptors were. And Toronto, having fallen short a few times, they knew this was their opportunity, and they were prepared for the moment, Maddie. This was no fluke. This was no like, oh, they stole game one. No. That was the third time this season that they'd beaten Golden State.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jonesy. Leo, Pascal Siakam, biggest stage, and there's so many pieces to his story that we all love, and so many of us that follow him and follow his journey. You just understand what that moment is for him, and he captured it. And he had an organization that believed in him. I remember having this conversation early on, and I'll let you talk about his performance, but early on in the season with Nick Nurse, when he was really struggling, handling the ball, rebounds, bringing it up, throwing it into the third row, dribbling off of his foot. And he said, Matt, I'm going to allow him because I believe in him. We're going to develop him to do these things because you guys have all mentioned this. It's going to help us later. He's going to be a better player for this, which ultimately will be a better team for this later. Game one, biggest game of his life. And Leo, tell us about Pascal Siakam and what a brilliant performance.
Oh, he delivered. And Matt, to your point that, here's a player that can't play and be afraid to make mistakes. And Nick Nurse put him in a position where he was confident, he believed in himself. And you can't do that necessarily with everybody, but if you do it with a guy that you know is going to go in the gym every day, hey, my shot wasn't falling, I'm going to work on my shot. My handle needs to get better, I'm going to work on my handle. You knew that about Pascal. So whatever it is, he's going to work through it and find a way. And he delivered, man. You talk about that game one. How about 32 points? Here's the best part. 14 of 17 shooting. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You're the biggest stage in the NBA, the biggest game in your career. You don't even start playing basketball till you're 17. Most guys are already identified as NBA prospects by the time they're 17. And you come out on the biggest stage and put up numbers like that. And I think that really spurred the Raptors. Yeah, they still had a strong Kawhi. They had a strong Gasol in that game. But you needed that spark, that burst, and the crowd just fed off it. So it was a phenomenal performance. And I think, any one of you guys would agree that, we expected a lot, but that was over the top. Right, Sherm?
No question about it. Pascal's one of those guys that, I kind of liken him to a stock. You make your money, you earn it, you put it into a stock. Now, do you pull it out when the stock isn't doing well, or do you ride the wave and kind of go through the motions and know that stock? How much do you believe in that stock? And I thought that the Raptors and Nick Nurse especially showed how much he believed in Pascal.
I didn't know that Sherm was actually a stockbroker on the side. Are you telling me
I've lost
money in the market?
I don't want to see your portfolio right now.
I've lost a lot of money in stocks. I'm talking about stories I've heard about people who invest properly in stocks.
Help me out.
So you're telling us all to stay and ride the wave of the market?
Oh, you can ride whatever you want. My money's in my pocket right now. But I also remember, guys, last season, and I talked about this in another episode, but last season against the Phoenix Suns, early in the season at Scotiabank Arena, Pascal was not having a good game. He was maybe 3 of 12 from the floor at the time, and Nick Nurse put the ball in his hands for the last possession of the game. And Pascal made that left-handed layup to win the game for the Raptors. It's moments like that you hearken back to that go to your point, Matt, about the trust that Nick Nurse has, and Leo, about the ability to believe in a guy, even when it's not going well in the moment, to give him that confidence that you still believe he can get the job done. And he was absolutely phenomenal. And Steve Kerr, before game one, talked about Pascal and kind of likened him to a young Draymond Green. And I don't think Draymond Green liked that very much. And I think that Pascal went against Draymond Green knowing that there was a bit of that, I'm going to show you that you're not me. And Pascal put it to him. Draymond Green had triple-double. But guys, and you guys know this, Pascal's performance on the biggest stage of his career was absolutely phenomenal.
Sure. By the way, I just got my quarterly reports in the mail today. Can I come mow your lawn, please? I need some help.
Absolutely. I'm not paying you, though. I'm not paying you, though.
You know, when you finish your point, you made a great point, and I wanted to touch on it. Draymond Green is an outstanding defensive player. And he was they were really concerned with Kawhi Leonard in game one in terms of their defensive coverages. So they said, you know what, Draymond, you're going to handle Pascal Siakam, and we're going to be just fine there. And Sherm, you made a great point there. Against an outstanding defensive player like Draymond Green, he did his best work in the post, mid-range, perimeter, breaking him down off the bounce. And as we know, he is a unique guy to guard. Do you guard him with an athletic three? Do you guard him with a stronger four-man? Do you have a guy that has the lateral quicks to keep him in front of you? He's a difficult guy. And I think after game one, the Warriors recognized that this guy's even a lot better than they ever thought.
Jack, when you win a championship and you're a title team, and I don't say this in a negative way, there's a bit of arrogance about you, right? Like Golden State, this is, fifth trip to the finals. They were looking for 3 in a row. It was one of those, okay, well, he's having a good game, Pascal, but we got Draymond and he'll look after him. And I just, no matter what they said on the scouting report or what he watched on film, when you see a guy in person and you're looking him in the eye and you get a feel for his competitive spirit, all of that changes. And as good a player as Draymond Green is, as good a defender, I have to believe there was a very small part of him that was taken by surprise. It's like a fighter. You get in the ring and oh yeah, this guy can punch. And he lands one on your temple and you go, dang, that guy can hit. I mean, I think there's a part of me that says it caught Draymond Green and it caught the Warriors by surprise. And now going forward, they're thinking, wait a minute, we've got to devote a little bit more to this guy. And what does that do? It opens it up for other people. And again, I go back to the Raptors defense as well. Golden State, Draymond Green had 10 points. 2 other players were in double figures, Steph and Clay, nobody else after that. So again, the combination of Pascal and I think keeping Golden State off balance, Matty, and then the defense that the Raptors were playing, they were full measure for that win in game one.
Yeah, there's no question. It's that time of the show where we want to thank, obviously, everybody that's out there on the front lines. And here we are, another day. Fortunately, we get to relive this magical run, game one. And a couple of things, and it says a lot about the organization. It says a lot about these players, how unselfish they were, how much they believed in each other. And that's where we are now, right? We need to believe in each other, have each other's backs, and do what we all need to do, which is, stay at home, stay 6 feet apart, social distancing, and only go out for essentials. A couple of different things to wrap it up. The Toronto Raptors were the first team in the history of the NBA to advance to the NBA Finals without a lottery pick. There's only 2 rounds in the NBA draft. There's only 60 players worldwide that get drafted. So lottery picks, if you compare it to the NHL, that's like your first 4 rounds of an NHL draft pick or NHL draft. And there's 7 rounds in that. And so it speaks so much about what Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, and Nick Nurse look for in players. And we laugh and joke a lot about analytics and all the other things, but they believe in guys. They give them the opportunity to fail, the opportunity to prove themselves. They have the right development model. There's only, two other organizations that are close to it in the development land? That's Miami and San Antonio. Toronto Raptors are right there at the top of the NBA. They ultimately go on to be the first team in the history of the NBA to win the NBA Finals without a lottery pick. But they look for one thing: compete. Are you willing to compete? And we've spoken about this now for the last week plus about the resiliency, right? The no quit. You got to compete. That's what we all need to do right now for each other, compete for one another right now. So thank you so much. One other quick little story. I go to the rink and go to the arena, as all of you know, and I never really plan about shouting out towns, and you guys all get the requests and say, hey Matt, can you shout this out, shout this? It's the first time I'm in my car and I'm driving down, and what am I going to do special today for Canada, for the country? And I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to shout out every capital of the province or territory in Canada. Now, if they didn't get to that point, I don't know. I just was saying them off the top of my head. And if there was more, I don't know what was going to happen or what I was going to do. But you mentioned this, Sherman. It's what made me think about the three-point shooting. They made 13 threes, 13 capitals. Was it destiny? Maybe. Who knows?
All for you, Maddie.
Not for me. All for the country. All for the country. And it's pretty cool. But thank you to everyone out there. Leo, Jonesy, Sherm, Jack, and also my man E. Any parting words? Did you want to sing "Oh Canada," Leo?
No, I got my first note in. I'm good. We
We had enough singing with Jonesy's Brady Bunch tune the other day. So.
Wait till you guys have to sing for the promo. The producer has the lyrics now. You all got a line.
My agent ain't going for that.
Hell no.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, right, to everybody out there on the front lines.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
See you next time. Crew Call. Raptors take game 1 of the NBA Finals.